Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel and one Mr. Quest for the Bestest himself, Timo Nelson. We're here to do it. We are here to review the flop of the year. We're here to talk about Damien
Yeah,
Chazelle's Babylon. But before we do, if you want to talk to us, as many of you already have about Babylon, be sure to join our Discord link
sure.
as usual. Top of the description or down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment, and pour one out for Damien Chazelle, one of my favorite filmmakers, who needs to,
Yeah,
I believe the figure is make $250 million at the box office. And after the first frame, I think we have about 5. So it's going to be an uphill battle.
it's getting there.
It's a start.
He's
Give
got
it time,
245
Yeah.
million to go,
You gotta
but
start
he'll
somewhere.
get there, I think.
But
Maybe.
let's just get into it. Maybe this review is going to sell some tickets, maybe not. All I know is that my 1250 was statistically significant, which is never a great sign. But what is a great sign are sort of my thoughts on the film. But before I give those, I want to throw it over to the man with the hat himself, Timo Nelson. What do you think of Babylon?
The hat wearer in this family.
Well, thank you. As the hat wearer in this family, I'm in my get up for a late 1920s, early 1930s timed movie, and that's
Sure.
where Babylon takes place. I found myself being fairly entertained by this film. On some further reflection, I don't really know how much I got out of it. I find the film's themes and kind of what it says to be the same kind of stuff that a lot of movies say about Hollywood. But I do find myself really liking other aspects of it. I think the first half of the film is just like everything that we were promised in the trailers and the advertisements, and it's just delivering on many cylinders. I don't know if all of them, but let's say 5 out of 6 or 7 out of 8 if you've got a fancy car. And of course the set design, the soundtrack, the cinematography, shot on film, really beautiful. Some really great moments in there. Some characters I really enjoyed, but on the whole just kind of let me be in well, I spent 3 hours watching this movie and I'd it's
Don't regret it.
I don't regret it. I was entertained, but I'm kind of I'm kind of whelmed by this movie, even though everything that it was telling me in its promotional materials was trying to get me feeling overwhelmed. And there were some overwhelming scenes, but the film as a whole, maybe all the puzzle pieces just didn't fit together in the end. So kind of a mixed bag for me.
Tucker?
Yeah, I think there's just some puzzle pieces missing here because this is a fascinating puzzle when you look at it from far away. You're watching those trailers and you're getting into the film and you're like, holy shit.
What is this thing going to be about?
Right.
It's hard to tell because there's so little plot information or frankly even really character information in those trailers, and obviously there's a lot more information about the world, about these characters that we get in this film, but they're not left in the greatest place. And I think that for me the weakest aspect of Babylon, or the thing I can criticize it on most, is that I went from thinking, watching, halfway through the movie, I'm watching 90 minutes of the film, this could be a 5 out of 5. This could be one of the greatest film experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
I'm so blown away by so many of the aspects of this film, and then it just goes down, it gets boring, and then it gets weird, and then nothing happens, and then it ends just kind of randomly almost. So it's like a sugar rush of a film. It starts really high, and then it crashes about halfway through. And not that second half is bad. It's just not what we were promised. And it feels largely superfluous, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I love the movie. I don't think that's a great surprise to anybody, really.
No bones about it.
No bones about it. Another great. I like Bones and all. Another great film. Didn't get to review that one, so I'll just say it quickly. Fucking
Joe
love that movie
Biden's
too.
number one. You saw Obama's list, but Joe Biden's got bones and all.
Based.
Him and Timmy.
But Babylon.
Go on.
So
I'm sorry for derailing you.
Here's the thing about Babylon, right? You're talking about expectations. You're talking about all this shit. I had no fucking idea what I was supposed to expect when I walked into Babylon, because I love Damien Chazelle. His name is what sold the ticket for me. And as I say, and I've been saying this, everybody who knows me knows this. Everybody who's gone to a movie with me in the last 6 months knows this and is annoyed by it. When that Babylon trailer comes on, I go for 2 minutes in the theater every fucking time. I'm pumping my fist because I'm like, this is so cool, right? But even then, as Babylon began, and as we kept getting deeper in the film, I kind of had this realization of I had no clue what I was walking into. And I think that's maybe why the film is doing so poorly, because I don't think it was marketed very well.
Yeah.
But because of that, as soon as the film began with a guy getting shit on by an elephant and where the camera is in the anus of the elephant, I'm like, whatever happens next, I'm just here for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This to me
Absolutely.
is a film all about its vibes, and vibes
100%.
vibes carry me a long way in my personal enjoyment of film. I mean, Blade Runner is my favorite movie of all time. That movie is only vibes. There's no plot in Blade Runner.
That is a vibe-based movie.
And and so I've been talking to some of my friends who are like, will I like Babylon? Should I see Babylon? I'm like, brother, Babylon is 3 hours of Damien Chazelle and a bunch of actors just riffing. And stuff happens.
Yeah.
And they were like, what if? And they wrote that. They wrote the what if. And then it just got in the movie. And for me, that's all I really needed. And we're at full spoilers, by the way. So click away.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here.
I mean, odds are you haven't and are not going to see Babylon, so who really cares? But by the time
Unless your name is Andrew or Roscoe or Alex.
Statistically speaking.
yeah, but by the time we're into like the fourth layer of Tobey Maguire's like weird like sex occult thing under a bridge,
Jesus Christ.
I'm like, just fucking bask me in it. At this point, whatever. And so I am with you guys that there's probably an objective lens to criticize this film through, and I'm not going to be sitting here singing the sort of objective filmic praises of Babylon, but I also have very little criticism because I just wanted the ride, and I think the ride was fantastic.
I think it does give it's quite an exhilarating ride.
Yeah.
The first half of the film is like so frenetic, and it's so filled with the energy that the score brings, but also the cinematography and the editing and just our big set pieces. The film is like one giant set piece after another. We have that party scene for the first half. The party scene that we kind of open the film at. They're bringing the elephant to the party, and that's where it starts. That is like, oh my god, that's like a half an hour long scene. It's like super long at the beginning of the film, and then afterwards there's the title card. I was like, okay, we're in for it now when the title card shows up like way into the movie.
Yeah, Drive My Car-esque.
Yes, very Drive My Car-esque.
There's a word.
The two movies very similar
in length, and probably the number of people who've seen them. There's a word that I don't use often, but I think is very applicable to this film, which is debaucherous.
This is a debaucherous movie.
There's a very closely related parallel universe to ours wherein I saw Babylon with my mom, and I think that would have been a weird experience because
very strange.
Damien Chazelle was like, what is literally every fucked up like thing that could happen? Let's get some
absolutely.
Pissing, let's get some drug overdoses, let's get some public sex, let's get some elephant shitting, right?
Lots of it.
And I think you're right, it contributes to this sort of energy. And if we had to sort of take this lens back for a second, kind of look at the film as a whole, I think where it might make its mistake, as you guys are saying with this sort of halfway through disconnect, is I think that the film is a little bit too much sort of in the head of its characters, in the sense of when everybody is killing it in the silent era, and the film is so much fun. But then we get to the era where everybody's uncomfortable and Hollywood is changing and nobody fits in anymore. The film itself just slows down. And I understand the intent of that. And to me, I was already on board, so it didn't bother me as much. But you're right, when you look at just sort of the filmic complexity of that entire party sequence, it's never recaptured. Yeah. Part of me wonders if it didn't even need to be recaptured, but I think there's a problem when that hits you first, and then we spend a lot of time just kind of like dicking around in Brad Pitt's like sort of posturing about what Hollywood has become and what his place in it is. And I almost think of like Goodfellas, how that third act is intentionally edited really fast because Henry Hill's on a lot of cocaine. When that ends your movie, I think it's a more natural progression to ramp up to that, opposed to sort of come down from that high.
Yeah, like a sugar high.
And I think that might have been a mistake. The more I think about it, he probably shouldn't have structured the film that way, but it is probably unavoidable for the sort of arc he wanted to follow with his character.
I think it has to do with kind of what you're saying. Makes me think about my issue with what this film is about. This film seems to be about the big shift in the industry. What happens to your individual players, maybe your stars, maybe your older stars, maybe your wild childs, in Hollywood when the system no longer needs them. This is like the common movies about Hollywood kind of always take this perspective of Hollywood is a machine, and it chews you up and it spits you out, and once it's done with you, you are screwed and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And so, like Sunset Boulevard, that is what these Sunset Boulevard and this movie, I think, are about the exact same thing. Even though they're kind of different time periods, I think that the thematics of the films are like nearly identical. And so for me, seeing this film in today's lens, I'm like, I want more. I want more commentary on what, do these what's going on with these characters, beyond just like that they are struggling and that the coming of sound really messes with the, what's her name's character with the Jersey accent, our main character.
Nellie Leroy.
Yeah, Nellie Leroy, when her voice isn't quite right, and like,
yeah, though it still sounds fine. This isn't singing in the rain with the really high pitched voice. She sounds good,
but like to me, these aren't super original ideas to take, especially about the coming of sound. I think they're pertinent. I think the industry is going through a large-scale transformation right now. And I think that maybe for the people really, really engrossed in Hollywood, it can kind of feel like this new age, this new coming of sound in which, streaming, I'm talking about streaming versus theaters versus, you know, who's making the movies, how are people watching them? It's really, really changing a lot right now. And so those anxieties that are present in the industry today, I feel like are being represented in this film. But it's like we've had these anxieties before, and maybe it's special that they're happening right now and we can take that. But like, I just find that the film loses steam because the thing it chooses to be about isn't as interesting as it could possibly be.
Yeah, I think it's not that, well, for me, it's not that the themes or the topic aren't as interesting as they could be, but they're not presented in the way that they could be as interesting as they could possibly be. And I think for me, that is primarily the fact that we get the first half with a lot of energy and the second half with less energy. This movie is long, and if you trim out 30 minutes from that second half, you don't feel a thing. There are plenty of scenes that can be cut down, can be edited faster, that can be ended a little bit quicker. And then the film would keep a little bit more of its momentum. If you're clipping through these stories a little bit faster, then there would feel like it was keeping up the energy pace of that first half, even though it's about slower, more retrospective topics, because I think that is needed for the themes that this film is talking about. These people are literally on drugs, and they're going to parties, and it's all energy all the time, and the crazy loudness of that silent era, because they can be loud. There's no microphones to pick up the sounds of people having sex in the back room or whatever. But you hit that sound era, and yeah, everything slows down. And that makes sense thematically. But in terms of the amount of time that we spend in that slower paced time period, that is where I feel the movie doesn't justify its 3-hour runtime. I feel like I learned more about our main cast of characters in that second half than maybe in the first half. I don't really know. I have to think about it a little bit more, but I didn't feel like the time we spent with them was necessarily needed to get what we got out of it, because I don't think any of these characters are amazing. I think the actors that are playing them are doing a great job, but in terms of the writing, the dialogue, we learn about their personalities, especially in that second half, it feels a little bit simple, trite. We've seen this before. We've seen it done better in Singing in the Rain and Sunset Boulevard and well, not The Artist, because that's not really about characters, but that's about a similar concept. So that's why this film drops off for me. But as I want to recenter on after you guys sort of respond to this, that doesn't mean I don't like this movie. This is still one of the most impressive pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen. It just is incredibly imbalanced.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Timo, because I sort of, La La Land, I'll speak about La La Land for a second. I love that movie, and the movie's about something.
Why would you compare that to this? That's ridiculous.
Wow. Damien Chazelle movies about Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, he's making a similar film again. This is from the director of First Man comes Babylon. It's more like from the director of La La Land comes Babylon. But for me, why I love La La Land beyond whatever the fuck the movie's actually about is that it's sort of it's a very personally inspiring film. Like I think it's the film is ultimately very...
Oh yeah, you just like you feel so much for those characters.
And obviously it's a very crushing film and sort of its depiction of sort of the lives these people are trying to lead in Hollywood and various things. But to me, there's something about Damien's filmmaking that's very emotional and energetic and affecting. And so when I look at Babylon, I could read it as being about the industry, and you're right. I think that's what the movie actually is about. But like, to me, there's a far more intimate lens that the film takes to sort of film as a whole. And you're right about this idea that we're at another infraction. I almost said infraction point because I just rewatched Glass Onion and there was a joke about it. He says the wrong word. He meant to say it doesn't matter. It's only funny to me. We're at another inflection point for Hollywood.
I haven't seen
right?
Glass Onion yet.
Yeah, I fucking love that movie. There's something nice about the film, ultimately, to me, being about reconnecting with the fact that movies are important to people and emotionally investing. Because I almost see there's like three, to me, Babylon exists in three parts. Hoorah, we're having sex and we're making movies. Ho hum, we're making movies, right? And then we have Daniel Calva returning to that theater, in which we get
Diego. Excuse me.
Oh no, sorry, Diego. He does a very good job in the film. Diego Calva returning to the theater and watching that montage of Persona and Avatar and all of this stuff, and
he like sees forward into the future.
And like part of my mind was thinking, Christ, I wonder what the licensing for this sequence was like. So part of my mind was thinking that. But
Jesus Christ, a great point.
The larger part of my mind was thinking, like, to me, ultimately, this last weird, extra diegetic ending of the film is almost a response to the hour or 15 or whatever that came before. Of like, despite whatever happens to Hollywood, despite however our form changes, there is an intrinsic, transcendent love of cinema.
Yeah.
And to me, Babylon...
I definitely feel that in the film.
And I think why I appreciated Babylon a lot in sort of a similarly intimate way to the way I appreciate La La Land is that it's talking about an industry, but it feels like it's more talking to me and talking about the importance of loving movies no matter what happens to them. And so I think that end note, to me, compensates for a lot of the sort of lull of what comes before. Because I do still think that there are moments that kind of bring that up, be it the probably too long but quite funny sequence of them trying to film the "Hey, I'm in college" scene and things like that.
That's great. That's an amazing sequence.
Or
the guy dies in the sound box. Oh my god, really that's hilarious.
So there are these buoys, right? But even for those low points, I think that ending to me does a lot to reinvigorate me as just a person that likes film, and that's a high note that I take away from the film. I don't really remember as much of the downswing, perhaps.
Yeah, for me, the personal connection to the themes of this film and where I think its lens into the topic of early Hollywood history is so much more pertinent and detailed than many movies have even tried to tackle, is that this is I think I kind of reject the personal aspect in terms of not on me feeling personal, but the film feeling personal into the lives of these characters, because this is such a wide lens onto Hollywood. Damien Chazelle is up on top of the Hollywood Hill with the Hollywood sign, and he's looking down, and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go there. We're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna visit this person and that person, and we're gonna talk about the parties and the people that are renting the cameras and the people that are writing that are like washing the costumes and like the slums of the high parties." And there's so much this film talks about and shows scene to scene, especially in that first half, and then a different angle in that second half, that I was really blown away by that. When we're watching the coming of sound, which we've seen in other movies, but they're showing that, okay, it's not only about the fact that the microphone needs to pick them up, but if they want to move it, they would have to shut everything down for a day, and the guy is in the sweat box over there because they can't have the sound happen, and like each of these elements is so like focused in on that for me it feels like he really understands and respects what film history is and can show it in a way that endears you to it, because these moments are funny. They're presented with good editing. The production design is fantastic. And these are usually elements that, even if a movie is set in this era, like Singing in the Rain, like The Artist, we usually don't lean into the like breadth of what this meant and what this industry was at the time. And that was part of what Babylon did so well, is just point a wide angle at this whole entire thing.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate that. I mean, what jumps to mind immediately is the German director of the silent films is F.W. Murnau-esque dude. You know,
Played by Spike Jonze.
The light, we are losing the light. And like, it's, oh my God, it's like, that stuff is, it's pretty accurate if you know Hollywood history. Like, you have these German immigrants coming, working from UFA, you know, they come over in the 20s a little bit, a lot more in the 30s. And like, yeah, they spoke in funny accents and they yelled crazy stuff. And for me, that was like a great fan service moment, just to see this part of cinema history that I feel like is totally forgotten now in modern day, that like Hollywood is built by immigrants, really. And another of your points, Tucker, that it, in its wide lens that it looks at Hollywood, we get to move out of the boardrooms, and we get to move out of the studios into the places that like,
into the trenches,
real people lived and worked. And you get to see that all these extras on this giant medieval battle scene are like killing each other. Some dude dies on set. Like, that is, I think, like the vibe of that scene is great, because
immaculate. Yeah,
you get to see and feel this like early Hollywood energy. And so, I mean, part of, I think, what makes me less interested in the second half is I think a lot of our really interesting side characters kind of fall away, and we drill into our main cast and kind of our vignette. I mean, we barely even get to see what was the trumpet player's name? We get to see a little bit of him.
Sidney Palmer.
Sidney Palmer. We get to see his story come to fruition, I guess. And I thought that was a my probably favorite side character arc, I guess. We see a number of side character arcs, and I thought that one was real well done, and like it ends with him being asked to wear blackface because of the lighting and whatnot, which is all very accurate. Like, that is really how Hollywood worked. They would, screw over black actors because they didn't think about how to light different skin tones differently. And so I found that to really work for me. But like, we lose a lot of these other characters in the switch over to sound. Yeah. And I guess that's accurate, but in like a film story sense, to me, I'm missing something there. And from whether it's the characters or the story, when we drill down just into Manny and Nellie, it's like, come on, give me a little bit more. Give me some more stuff. And I don't know. I mean, like, I flip flop on Brad Pitt's character. I don't know. Do I like him? Do I like in the first half he's good, in the second half he's kind of wailing. I like his stuff that he says about cinema. I think that stuff is pseudo intellectual enough to be right up my alley.
Yeah, I think, Tucker, I should amend a little bit what I was saying, because Brad Pitt's character is sort of emblematic of what I meant when I said that the film felt intimate, in that it's sort of it's very global and it looking at Hollywood, but it feels like it's sort of with me in its sort of the awe-inspiring nature to film, and I think it sort of invites moments for people who enjoy movies to be reminded why they enjoy movies, and to me that's why it feels intimate.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, and I think about one of my favorite lines from the film. Damien Chazelle is really good at just like putting lines in his movies that if you really begin to scrutinize them, they probably don't mean a whole hell of a lot, but are compelling to listen to. Like when Ryan Gosling's talking about jazz being about...
It makes no damn sense. Compels me, though.
When Ryan Gosling in La La Land's like, jazz love it, conflict and compromise. What the fuck is he even really talking about? You know what I mean? But it's
no, he's talking real shit. You just don't know jazz, Abram.
But I think about like Brad Pitt's character, when Brad Pitt is because he's got his old shovel of a wife that works at the theater or whatever, is like always telling him how to perform his lines, and and my art is better than your art. And I am nothing if not guilty of shitting on mass media, Marvel, whatever. I do that all the time. But I think there's something nice about Brad Pitt's idea of, hey, I might make these goddamn dumb costume pictures, but for millions and millions of people like my family, that meant a whole hell of a lot more than whatever the hell you do for your 100 friends at the theater. And so I just think that, again, it's my idea that there's these little buoys in the second half. For me, it's sort of the melancholic feeling of that back portion of the film does still hold moments that are important, like this exchange between Brad Pitt and his
Yeah.
wife. They are just not as sort of brilliant, and I mean that both in like a intellectual and an aesthetic way. That the first half of the film is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's a different
Yeah,
appeal.
they're just significantly less unique because
Yeah,
that is what that first half does so well, and where I hope to God this movie starts picking up awards left and right from all these different award shows for just some of the most unique filmmaking and production design and culmination of all these different crafts coming together that Damien Chazelle is so good at. Full disclosure, I have not seen First Man, but Whiplash
good
and La La
movie.
Land are two of the greatest movies of the last decade. And I think that, like, from a cultural standpoint, that's kind of hard to argue because what Damien Chazelle knows so well is syncing the actors and the dialogue and the costume design and the production design and the score and the themes into, like, certain moments that, like, transcend film. Like that final moment of Manny in the theater like shows me that's how I feel when I'm watching Whiplash. The final sequence of Whiplash and everything's going, the score is going, and that's how I felt for that first half of the movie, as you were talking about. Just like it reminded me what is so impressive about film because there is so much going on, like an ungodly amount going on in these sequences, and sometimes it's a cutaway to a guy being pissed on or someone like passing out on the floor, but that contributes to the ridiculous nature of this of that first half of the film that builds comedy in really interesting ways that I don't know if I was fully expecting.
I didn't
And
expect this to be nearly as funny as it was, but it is quite funny.
Yeah.
it is really funny, and that whole first day on set is probably one of my sequences of the year. And watching Manny drive back and wait in the thing, and while we're cutting back to
Very
to
relatable
Nelly.
to like sending the dude away from set to go pick up some random,
Yeah.
you know.
But again, that's a plot point that is realistic to the time period that we don't usually end up seeing in one of these films. But again, that part, like, intercut between Brad Pitt, like, drinking his day away in the tent and Nellie Leroy up on that bar giving an amazing performance and having that, like, single tear moment, and the snappy editing between the director and her and Samara Weaving showing up. And, like, there's so much going on that it blows my mind of how they assembled all of this. And it is that culmination of everything that makes this movie stand out and be worthy of so much praise. But again, that's where the movie is so unique. Like, I've never seen anything done to this degree. But I've seen reflective Hollywood dramas of people talking in boardrooms and in the fancy Hollywood house before. And that's what that second half is. And it's significantly less unique, but I also don't think it's as bad as maybe I was letting on or thought I was, like, expressing earlier, because it just is not what I was expecting. Because guess what those trailers are? Guess what every bit of marketing of this movie is? It's from that party, frankly. Like, nothing is shown from that second half, except for a shot of Tobey Maguire occasionally, if you're lucky. But I didn't know that the film was going to hard shift, pretty much. I think after the snake fight is kind of when it, boom, drops off and we're doing drama mode now. I didn't know that we were going to get that. Frankly, I thought it was just going to be a crazy party for 3 hours, and it wasn't. So I think that that is just a changing of my expectations that I'll need to do when I inevitably rewatch this movie. I absolutely will. I think the length is a detriment, as I was saying, but I don't think it's a barrier that I'm not willing to hop over and land in your camp. I think, Abram, like, I like these characters. I like the themes that they're pulling out in that second half, but I just wasn't expecting part of Babylon to be a little bit trite and underplayed.
Yeah, I mean, I you're right, but I do think that there is still a weirdness to that second half that is still special, and I think a lot of it comes from, again, this idea to me that it felt like there was a lot of riffing going on, and it's part of why the whole Tobey Maguire digression, because ultimately that's what it is, it's a digression, is so fun to me, because I actually found myself on a plot level most compelled by the movie then. Because we set up this situation that is, it makes sense, you know. Nellie down on her luck, you know, pissing all her money away. She's gambling a shit ton. Well, now we've got gambling debt. We got to pay off gambling debt. Oh, okay. Manny, you know, all of a sudden Diego Calva's found his footing. He's got all this money. He's going to pay it off. No. What begins is this peculiar tangent through this very filmic scenario in which we arrive at the big mafioso's house, and we got the big bodyguard, and he's spitting, and he's got his gun in his back pocket, right? And we got a bag of fake money. What a great reveal it is when we learn that money is
we
fake.
find that out in a perfect moment.
Yeah, and I think it's just moments like that it's like these. Let's use a drug reference. Who gives a shit, you know? It's like these heroin shots of just like fun as we're in the second half, you know? And
you just have to mention heroin, and I'm in. I understand. Thank you for speaking on my level.
By the time we find ourselves in these sort of like 5-floor like side quest dungeon with Tobey Maguire, and I feel like I'm watching Under the Silver Lake or something. It's just fun being there. And ultimately, I think a lot of my praise of Babylon comes back to this idea of it's just fun watching this stuff happen. Tobey Maguire's giggling, and there's like people fucking, and there's an alligator, and there's like a guy eating rats. It doesn't make sense that we're doing this right now. But it's that sort of nonsensicality and the fact that the film just rolls with its own punches to where I'm never bored by the movie. There's certainly down moments, but projectile vomiting across somebody's foyer after making the joke about the bear wiping his ass with the rabbit, or running around and hitting the guy with that medieval thing. It's just cool, ultimately. And I think there's just something refreshing about watching a movie wherein of this scale with these actors that was just allowed to do whatever the hell it wanted to. And ultimately that's
what Babylon is.
Yeah.
That's the legacy of this movie. I think will inevitably be, after people get over the fact that this movie is going to lose Paramount a bazillion fucking dollars, is that they gave one of the brightest filmmaking minds of his generation $100,000 and
$100,000.
apparently no fucking oversight. You know what I meant, $100 million. And apparently zero oversight. No one's saying, no, trim this back. No, why don't we punch this up a little bit? He just did what he wanted, and maybe that wasn't the greatest idea, because I think there's a better Babylon out there in ether that is trimmed down, that has a little bit better focus on some of these characters, that understands its themes a little bit better. But the creative vision of the debauchery of Babylon is its identity. And when we're looking at, future projecting 20 years in the future, we're thinking about Damien Chazelle, the Hitchcock of his time. I don't know, I'm pulling things out of my ass. Babylon, I don't think it'll be considered a low point. Yeah, maybe it's not Whiplash and La La Land, but then again, who's making a Whiplash and a La La Land back to fucking back, if not Damien Chazelle? But is that he had his creative vision, and he just fucking went for it. And I'm kind of excited to see him, like, have to roll with the punches of this being a failure, because you know what that means we're going to get the next thing from Damien Chazelle? A much smaller, more intimate film that does not have the crazy budget behind it, but that might feel more focused. And then in the future, maybe he's able to combine these two things and understands the writing of a personal, smaller scale story a little bit better, but learn from the craziness of Babylon how to do that scope and scale and spectacle. There's a narrative here that I don't think is as down as people are saying. It's not reviewing well, but I think retrospectively, this film is going to be like, oh, remember that sequence? Remember Margot Robbie? Remember the first day on set? And no one's going to really care that it lost Paramount. Who the fuck cares if Paramount loses a lot of money? Certainly not me.
I don't care.
Paramount just made...
I will say...
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, how much money do they fucking just make off of Top Gun? They can take this.
True. Yes.
Yeah. I want to toss my hat in the ring for one final point. We've missed out on we've danced around it a little bit, and it's important that we dance around it because the score of this movie is so fucking good.
Jesus Christ Almighty!
So good. It is the best score.
I honestly think
it is like
top 5 movie score of all time, in my opinion.
Just like I think the tone that it strikes between doing this like 20s big band swing kind of ragtime vibe with like taking what a lot of contemporary musicians do, like Too Many Zoos, Moon Hooch. There's these like bands that make like techno music out of saxophones and trumpets and stuff. And this film takes and combines those two ideas until we get this like really just bumping, driving, like these melodies, and the beat is just like so it's there. It makes me want to dance around.
Yeah.
but it also stays in this like musical style of the time, but allows Chazelle to just like go crazy with the camera, cut really fast, have awesome like rhythmic beats, you know, four on the floor kind of stuff, which is totally not like it's anachronistic, but it's way cooler. So I think this score really succeeds on tons of levels. It's great in the party scenes. I think it's damn good elsewhere in the film. You played it for me, Tucker, out loud, and I'm gonna listen to it again. I mean, it's
Hell yeah, buddy. Full thing is online. 1 hour and 37 minutes of Justin Hurwitz's Babylon score on YouTube right now. Link in the description.
I have that shit liked and downloaded on my Spotify right now because it's so fucking crazy. It is a crazy score.
Yeah, it's really good.
Do we want to say anything else about the movie? I saw a tweet.
I will say,
yeah. No, you go for it.
I was a little disappointed by Tobey Maguire in the film.
Sure.
He shows up like for not that much time. He's like really weird. I like totally don't get his character for like way too long until after like he shows up and I'm just like, who is this bozo? Like this guy's strange. This guy's really weird. And then like I kind of get why he's like really weird. It's like, oh, he's like 100% of the time whacked out on drugs. Like this guy is always on drugs. And so I was like, okay, I get your vibe, but like I don't know. I just kind of disappointed by his performance. Like he gets to like giggle in front of some deranged shit. That's okay. Like I think I don't really know what you do more with that character, but I was just disappointed by Tobey Maguire. I feel like he can do more. Let him do more.
He's a Tim Burton Batman villain. I think, and it's peculiar.
Kind of, yeah.
Definitely peculiar.
He's a Joker meets Penguin kind of motherfucker.
Yeah. Totally is. Joker makes Penguin on crack.
I saw a tweet that said, in 20 years, when all you fuckers are singing the praises of Babylon, I will say I told you so, and I'll also say it. And it'll be on camera now that I said it. Do we give scores on these videos?
You said it.
Because I don't want to.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I can't wait to give my score, and I've been thinking about it all week.
I haven't really thought about I haven't thought at all about what I'm going to give this film.
Here's the thing about Babylon is we're sitting here, we're reviewing this film. We start off our review, and I'm like, look, I love Damien Chazelle, I love La La Land, I love Whiplash, but Babylon didn't quite hit the highs I was thinking. But I think that the down parts of this movie just do not fucking matter in the long run, because I will forget them easily and happily. But what I will remember will stick with me.
90 minutes of other movie.
Exactly. And it's the rest of the movie that is going to stick with me forever. And frankly, again, on a rewatch, I think this could hop into like maybe not my top 50 of all time, but like among my favorite films, like bump it up on my list for this year, which is already a fantastic year for film. This is one of the most unique and memorable movies of the year. But unfortunately, the current narrative is no one is seeing it, and it is losing money, and which is sad, because I think this movie is fantastic, and I'm getting higher on it the more we talk about it, because what I remember is the good parts. My goldfish brain forgets the bad and remembers the good, but this movie has so much good that just keeps bumping it up and up and up. So I'm going to end up giving Babylon an 8.7 out of 10.
I think I'm going to give it like a 7.2 out of 10.
Sure.
I do remember the slow parts. They weren't like bad. They're not like, I don't really think there's any part of this movie that is bad. Like it's all like well made. It's really well acted. I think like all the there's no lines where I'm like, huh? Like what? Like all the lines like make sense in their contexts, but just kind of lackluster for parts of it. So 7.2.
Because I have to do due diligence as I do for Quest and care about how my rankings affect anything else. Fuck it, I'm going to give the movie a 10. I don't know. Here's what
Go ahead. Why not?
Here's what I want to say about Babylon.
You're allowed to do that.
As we wrap up. When I tweeted, I had as I always do, I watch a movie. I'm sitting in the car. In this case, I was just sitting in the theater so I could get the end credits music, making my little tweet. I saw the movie. And somewhere in the tweet, I said, like, Babylon reminds me why I love to create just things. I like to draw. I like to make films. I like to write. I like to do all this stuff. To me, the ultimate high watermark of any piece of art, particularly film, is when I feel like there's some sort of deeper, almost unexplainable connection I have to it. And I feel that way to a lot of Damien's work. And to me, it's those sequences of Manny seeing film unfold in front of him, or these moments that remind me of like, oh shit, yeah, it was so much fun a couple months ago when I pushed in the basement window of a dorm building and threw an extension cable down into there so we could use a fucking Kino flow light outside to film an outdoor sequence of a short film. Like, making film is fun. And the ability for Babylon to ultimately remind me why I find cinema so personally important is a really, really great praise I can offer. Sure, maybe the pacing's bad, maybe the writing is kind of weird, but ultimately I don't care. And does that make me a bad critic? It's not your concern. I like Babylon.
Well, you know, that makes me think. Thinking about how this film, just, I don't know, this is one rando point I'm going to throw in here. The idea that, like, the film inspires me and, like, reminds me why I like it so much. Yeah, I feel that. But you know what film I felt that, like, way more in? The Fablemans. I feel like Steven Spielberg's film of this year, like, really captures that, like, understand that, like that dawning of, like, oh, like, I can make movies. I can make these things. That was, like, a much more, like, personal and intimate connection to filmmaking for me. Maybe Steven and I's story is, like, a lot more similar than me and Manny's story. But, like, I think that I don't know how much of the connection I felt. And I just wanted to be like, oh, because Fablemans is also about making movies. And I also saw that. And I also thought, like, oh, wow, yeah, I love making movies. And I thought that in both films. Maybe just a little more in the other one.
For me, I felt that in Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
I've got a couple of small bottles of Prosecco in my fridge right now. I was like, maybe I should drink one in the spirit of Babylon, but I decided not to.
Yeah, and do some cocaine and get pissed off.
Yeah, you should do some. We should do some blow before we make this video.
Mom, I have a request.
Hey, Mom.
Drink cocaine and pee on me, please.